This is going to be probably my first commentary of the season. This was our, well, I guess more or less, my first timed 20 for the first week of the season. This is actually a full pug group. We're running Balanced Druid, Shadow Priest, Fire Magus, plus, of course, Priest. And this is going to be Neltharion Slayer. So I'm going to kind of walk you through what went right, what went wrong, and everything like that. So at the very start of the dungeon, you're seeing me jump in the hole early. That's going to teleport me through the ground to get me started, so I can actually start grouping up mobs pretty quickly here right off the bat, so my group can kind of come right in and just start doing damage. At best, it's maybe a 5%. It's like a 5-second time save, and none of my DPS did it, so it kind of doesn't matter as much. But we're going to start off pretty aggressive here, trying to grab the Nasher. We're going to be popping Dampen plus Weapons of Order. I can't grab that other Nasher right now, so we're going to just start with this. I noticed that my group's not here, so I'm kind of like playing it safe. We're going to be chaining that stuff momentarily. Now, this dungeon's trash for the most part. Feels pretty easy outside of a few specific mobs I'll talk about later in the dungeon. But this pack, you just want to be really aggressive with your cooldowns because you won't need them until boss fight, and even then, the boss doesn't hurt. I just don't feel like the boss hurt that much. Regarding talents and stuff, I'll probably have a link down below. I was running pretty much the build from last season plus, I think, Blackout Brew. Right here, I was grabbing a couple crawlers. I threw a Chi Wave. It padded into the big mob, which ended up pulling this whole next group, which honestly, I thought we were going to wipe here, and we're going to actually end up recovering it. These aren't the worst mobs to pull, but they're really unfriendly for melee. So luckily, running the Wizard Cleave allowed us to kind of keep full uptime and get this pull down. I am going to lose threat to that Lurker because of its kind of like isn't in the pull with me, so I'm trying to get a taunt on it. If you can see it, just past the group. Mainly here though, aim the frontal away if you are pulling this, and making sure you are just using kind of big mitigation for the tank busters. I'm going to continue kind of chaining crawlers in for cleave and for funnel. I am running out of Ox. Ox isn't that strong of a defensive anyways. We pop a Celestial Brew. I'm sitting on Bone Dust. I could probably have used here, but now we're just kind of focusing on staying alive from the crushes. Luckily about running a Wizard comp as well is that because they're all playing range, these crawlers aren't going to be too scary for most of them, because the pulls are going to be dropping in melee typically in front of me, so no one's actually going to be taking damage from it. So the pull does go down, and now we're going to, well, I type oops, because that was definitely not in the route. And then we're going to pull these three guys. Typically what we do there is we skip around by swimming through the water, and then we pull these three guys instead. But, well, we kind of have to make do. So we're going to end up skipping some mobs later in the dungeon. And actually the count works out pretty well because we have double Priest. Well, actually only one Priest really matters here. These guys don't do much. If you really want to optimize time, having a DPS or your healer jump down early could be a benefit here because you want to start boss RP. No one in our group, though, does that. We are in a pug after all. I don't know these guys. So we're just... The Fire Mage starts going now, kind of. But it's way too late. You want to go when they're much healthier. Now, this boss is unique. And I don't know if a lot of people know this. But the shards of the boss spawn based off of the amount of damage you're dealing to it. So you can stop shards by spawning if you stop DPS. If you notice that there's going to be a shatter soon. So that's kind of the play. The big thing here is just making sure you're focusing ads and cleaving the boss instead of vice versa. Because if you start ignoring the ads, you're going to wipe, because the shatter does damage based off of how many... well, shatter has a base value, also spawns the piercing shards on the ground, and it will do additional damage based off of the health percentage left on each skitter. So you want to make sure they're as low as possible if they're not dead. Luckily, we're able to keep them stacked up. Now, I'm going to try to taunt or get early damage to keep them on boss, but if they do run away, the skitters don't do that much damage with their melee attacks. So if someone has to tank it, like a DPS has to tank it for a bit, that's fine. Also, make sure you're dodging the frontal here. So I'm aiming it away, and as soon as it comes out, I'm going to just dodge it, because that will kill a tank. Provoking the skitters to make sure they're underneath boss is really good, especially if you're playing a heavier melee cleave. See, there's one out in range, but I'm going to kind of just let it sit out there for a bit. The DPS will eventually kill it, and if you look at the health bars, no one's really taking damage from their autos. The only scary part about them is they drop these pools on the ground, so you want to try to keep them underneath boss, especially with a comp like this. The second, or I guess technically the third shatter, will go typically right into a frontal, so you just want to be careful. Here's that frontal, we're going to sidestep it. For a tank, you can move in the shattered ground or whatever. DPS don't want to because it's following the shatter, but tanks are typically going to be a little bit more healthier, and it does do, I think it does nature damage. But again, one skitter is going to sit out on our range. It's not a big deal. They just want to make sure that they're healthy to not die to the shatter. And then what I like to do is I typically just walk the boss along this wall here, making sure that I'm aiming the frontal into the wall whenever I can. I'm zoomed in here, kind of playing like this at eye level camera angle, so I can actually taunt these skitters and see their frames. Making sure that they're right here. Now, as a tank, I like to save Touch of Death. I already used it already, so this one's going to go down right in time. And then once again, staying against the wall. And that's pretty much it. That's the name of the fight. Now, again, like I said before, the shards spawn every few percent you take off of the boss. There is an internal cooldown on it, but in higher keys like this, you might not actually... That doesn't really matter. It only matters in low keys. But you just, again, want to keep them underneath the boss. And again, if this shatter, if it's like 3 seconds away from being casted, just stop damage or slow damage so you don't get one to spawn last second. Because if you're in a comp like this that doesn't have a lot of burst damage, it can get really scary or be a one-shot. Like if a skitter was up there, which actually it might have been, we just die. So again, I'm kind of paying attention to the Razor Shard cast. I'm sitting in between crystals. This is not a fun camera angle, but this is what tanks have to go through. Also, sorry, I'm recording this at like 2 in the morning. I did this key a couple hours ago around midnight. Just as kind of like a last little hurrah for the first week of the season. I was hoping to get 120 done. It's been really rough pugging this week. I'm not sure if... I'm assuming if you're watching this video and you've made it this far, you're probably a Brewmaster main. If you're not a Paladin main right now, it's so hard to get into pug 20s. No one's inviting Brewmasters, despite myself being like almost 2k IO. Negative invites going out. So, finish that. The single target damage was okay there. Obviously, there's a lot of cleave, but 63k I'm pretty happy with. Didn't have to do too much healing because... I'm not getting hit by the frontals. If you're not getting hit by the frontals, you're not going to be taking a lot of damage here. So we're riding down the river, throwing fish for fun. And then down here, I have been pulling a lot of this trash. But because we had that giant pull early on before the first boss, we're actually going to be able to skip around the majority of this stuff. So luckily we have a priest, so we're going to be able to just Mind Soothe, walk by everything here. So Mind Soothe past these breakers and pelters. The breakers have a tank frontal, so just be careful of those if you do decide to pull them. And they also cast that avalanche ability, which has been hotfixed and it has been updated. You're going to see it in a bit. And then, of course, I try not to pull the hunter and then the Nasher, but sometimes some groups do. If you pull the drummer, though, that is the priority. You want to make sure you kill the drummer plus the war drum, or the drum of war, or whatever it's called. We're going to go into this double pull here. Pelters are priority, and I'm kind of scared for how they're going to feel on our first fort week of the season. I'm sure these guys might see a nerf because they already kind of slap. But as you can see, that tank frontal went right at me, and then it spawns 3 swirls, or I guess circles underneath players that players want to avoid. It's very, very fast, so you have to move almost immediately. So it's really good to have like a timer here. You can see it on my right-hand side. The avalanche is counting down. It's going to happen in 2 seconds. 1 second. Here's the cast now. And then, as you can see in the back, the range were kind of stacked, but they were able to dodge some of them. Again, we're seeing another Hulk here. You can't really skip this with Mind Soothe. You'd have to use an Invis Pot if you wanted to skip them, but honestly, the big damage is at the tank, so as long as the tank is making sure that they're using mitigation for both the tank frontal, or the tank knockback, plus the shards. I think the shards do nature damage if you hit this debuff that you see in the center of my screen. This weak war pack is by Reloe, by the way, so if you want it, the debuffs on these casts that you're seeing kind of in like the upper middle of my screen, I will probably share that as well. Reloe does an amazing job with the weak war packages. I typically make my own, but I just haven't had time this season to do so yet. I think I have some for like Underrot and Freehold, but a dungeon like this, I just grabbed his instead until I end up making my own. But it's a very good package for the time being. That guy goes down. Just wanted to be careful of the frontals, so I kind of backed him into that corner. And then here, I like to try to take care of the patrol first so no one accidentally body pulls or we're not like kind of on like a time crunch. I'm going to ring the guy away so I can not pull that pack. And then I'm going to pull this back corner. I've seen some groups skip this back corner pelter, which is fine. It's just, I don't trust pugs during the boss fight to like remember that the guy wasn't pulled. So I'm trying to group these guys up slowly but surely. And if we can, we want the pelter to disengage exactly where he was, right on these rocks. I'm trying to hit him, but I don't have ring for like 20 seconds. So I'm just kind of in a weird spot. I get knocked into the cave actually. And we're kind of just chilling. I am aggressively cycling my cooldowns, by the way. That's something that I haven't really talked about. But here, I typically like to start with Dampen Harm. Diffuse is a little bit more nuanced because it has to be magical damage, though it is a very massive DR. There isn't anything here that I know that could be spell reflected with Diffuse, but whenever I feel like I'm about to take a lot of like nature damage, like a lot of these tank busters from these bosses are nature damage, so that's a really good time to use Diffuse magic. Of course, Fort Brew is only a 20% DR, but it makes Stagger more efficient, and it's just a good DR to kind of like have as like a blanket, and it's going to get reduced, especially playing Blackout combo. You can get Fort Brew down to like, it's like a 2.5 minute cooldown as well. So you just kind of cycle between Dampen on pull and Fort on pull. And of course the Black Ox, as most players know, hasn't really been a thing. It has been a DPS cooldown in the past, like especially in Shadowlands with a lot of the conduits, but with its current build and the talents in the tree, it just aren't worth taking. So Nizao, like you can send, but it's not going to save you, nor is it going to do a lot of damage by the end of the key. Again, tank frontal, I'm going to try to aim at the wall here, and then it's really on the range on their DPS players to make sure they're dodging. I put down an early Ring of Peace to hope that the Pelters jump into it so they stay stacked. I think one did, I think, here, and the other one jumped into the wall, so we're keeping them super stacked. Oh, never mind, he just jumped out. And of course we're going to chain pull because most tanks, especially Brewmaster, like to chain pull to make sure that we're keeping up our stacks of Purified Chi. So whenever we do end up using Celestia Brew, that it's actually pretty massive. The Shaper just kicks Storm Bolts and the totems that they spawn. You just want to get rid of them immediately. On this difficulty, they only had like 10 health or whatever, so just any ability hits them, they're going to just get deleted immediately. I'm not sure if that's a bug or not. I didn't play in Legion, so I don't know this dungeon as well as I would like to. And I'm hoping that over the season I can learn some more cool tricks. Speaking of cool tricks, there is a cool trick on this boss that I ended up doing in this key, and I'll show you guys in a second once we pull. Now this boss is kind of awkward to pull because he starts up on the ledge and then as he lands he knocks you back. So I set up a Transcendence there, pulling with Chi-Wave, getting a Keg Smash, transcending into the Breath of Fire to make sure we can get damage and threat right away. I like to pull him away from the bridge. There's a bridge that's a little bit closer to him in the air. It kind of is weird with camera angles, so I kind of pull him back towards the entrance of the room to start. Now the big thing here is his Tank Buster. You want to make sure that it's nature damage. So using things like Dampen Heart and Diffuse are very effective here. Bellow of the Deep spawns these idols. If you rotate the boss like this, you can actually get them to stack. They always spawn. The first one will always spawn on his left hand, like kind of adjacent to him, and then the other one will spawn on his right hand. So if you rotate him counterclockwise, it'll actually spawn the totem on top of the boss, or on top of the other totem. This isn't as effective in a wizard cleave like this, or a caster cleave, because casters don't really have a problem with, you know, being stacked like that, or they don't have as much like cleave damage compared to like a melee. But if you have a melee comp, it's really, really beneficial because you can get those totems down very, very quickly. So once again, one to the left, we rotate 90 degrees, one on the right. So you rotate past the idol that he spawned is the best way to describe it. So we're going to try to get that down here really quick and then make sure that we're keeping track of his movement here. I kind of missed the first one. I think I'm tracking it. We don't mess this up at all. So it'll be this right totem here. You want to stay a little bit spread out just in case multiple avalanches target, you know, the same kind of players or the same group. If you stay spread out, you're typically going to take less damage or the less chance of getting hit by multiple, I guess. Boss comes up. Again, I'm under that bridge, so I'm trying to move him away because that bridge being above you kind of screws with your camera if you're playing top down like I am. The reason I like to play more or less top down on this fight is because of those hands that are spawning. They typically target DPS, but I've had them target me before, and if the tank's caught off guard and gets hit by them with the Tank Buster, you're typically going to die. So keep an eye out for it. And then again, Sunder, it's nature damage, Celestial Brew when possible, and like Diffuse Magic, Dampen is all very, very effective here. Again, rotating 90 degrees counterclockwise, idols are stacked, and you are zugging away. This fight is pretty basic though. The hardest transition into phase is definitely in the very first one because you have totems as he phases, so you have to deal with them and watch. But this next time he phases will be during, there's no idols up, so everyone can watch, and it's very, very difficult to miss. Typically group leads or whoever is confident that they know which one it is can mark it with skull. I like to follow with my mouse here if possible. I kind of got messed up a little there when they crossed, but I think it was this one based off of the angle, and we're going to commit. It looks like they were a little weird. If you look up at the top of the screen, they were kind of like looking at the other totem there. And they were kind of close, so they both got hit by avalanche. Now, luckily, we're able to get a battle res on him. I'm playing battle res bracers as a Brewmaster for situations like this. Not being a paladin and not being, so here's the hands by the way, not being a paladin or a guardian druid means that we don't have Brez in our kit. I'm going to make sure that I'm healthy with Celestial Brew first. We're going to get a Chi Torpedo backwards, and we're going to try to res our Boomkin here. And then what we're probably going to do is we're probably going to tunnel. He's going to spawn the two idols like that, but again, 10% means that we're just able to focus on kill. Hands are really spooky there, especially if you're close. So range DPS should try to stay as spread out as possible here. There isn't a ton of group damage, so there's no really reason to try to stay stacked for the healer here. We have the sub mill, so we're going for the kill. As I do this commentary, holy shit, like my voice is like giving out. All right, now we are juiced. We are feeling real good right now. That is one of the scarier bosses in here now that there have been nerfs to the third and last boss, but still a scary boss nonetheless. That didn't even make sense when I just said, holy shit, I just thought about that. So right here, I don't really know because of the percent that we pulled earlier, but I think we're still a little low. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull Crocs. Crocs are mostly physical damage here. So you can actually, like, this is a very easy pull for tanks to do. It's 4 targets. So I've seen some tanks actually pull this up into the next pack. That's possible. You just have to be a little careful about getting meleeed in the back if you are running with these guys. But doing them for the 4 of them here is not a bad idea, because the next couple of pulls are pretty easy. They do have this chomp ability. The chomp can kind of slap if you're not paying attention to it, but again, you can always kite as a Brewmasters have a really easy time kiting. It is a raging week. So the first week, of course, it's raging. The new raging, how it works is when they're sub 30% health, instead of like gaining damage like they used to, they're now immune to CC. So it's very difficult to kite. It's obviously like some important casts can't be stunned either. Just kind of scary overall. Just so the group is kind of set, I wanted to wait for the tank frontal to go off there. The lurker spawned in the back, and there is a grub. There are certain abilities actually can stop the metamorphosis cast, which I use paralysis there. And then once the grub dies, I think I end up chaining it. I can't remember. The focus here, though, is for sure the Brewmaster. You don't want him to get a second grub off. If another grub gets off, it just takes away from more efficient trash. Efficient trash meaning trash that gives percent. When trash doesn't give percent, it's not efficient to have to deal with. And that's what that guy does. That guy just misses water balloon as well. The Shadow Priest little lob. Another grub spawns. We have paralysis available. I don't think I end up using it here, but I will bring it closer. We got the disorient from the druid, and we're feeling pretty good. Unfortunately, I hit the mage there with that frontal. You got to be kind of careful with the Brewmaster because he does this tank slam. And the tank slam, if I'm not mistaken, I'm assuming it hits players because I've killed several people with it. Because I kind of spin it around, because it's not really a frontal, it's kind of just like a tank slam, like area of effect. I'm assuming, again, I didn't tank in Legion, so I don't really know what half of these mobs do still. Here's a grub. I get the paralysis on the lurker though, unfortunate, just so it actually stopped casting its little bile thing. And then, so this next fight is very strange for tanks. It has been nerfed several times though. I am playing Detox in this run, so I'm able to dispel the mage or the priest, depending on who might need it. The druid will probably end up dispelling himself. I'm getting griefed by by storming, and then the lurker is going to go down. For some reason, lurker threat tables are very strange. I feel like I lose thread very easily whenever the lurker burrows. Alright, so we're waiting here, making sure we're prepped. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to chain a CB in, so we're going to start pretty weak here and susceptible to big damage at the front. The minions here that spawn during the fight, you definitely need to prioritize them at all costs. I kind of use my defensives as I feel here. Slushibber is typically enough. If I ever feel like I'm going to take a little extra damage, I might pop like Diffuse. Because a lot of the damage that's scary in the fight are those pools on the ground. Sometimes it's hard to find a spot in melee to actually stay in melee to do damage, but we're just chilling, we're vibing. We're big old piss gaming. So I'm always dispelling the mage here unless I feel like the healing priest needs the dispel for throughput, because again, mage is very powerful. They have Cauterize as a cheat death, and they have Ice Block. Last stretch is coming out. I think I get the mage again one last time. It's a little late there. He took 2 ticks instead of 1. And then Spike Tongue, we are just running away. One mistake I made in my 1-minute boss guide videos is that I did not do this, so I didn't really get to show it off, but here it is. I get as far as I can with Chi Torpedo, put down a Transcendence. You can stand on these green pools. I choose not to because there's no reason to as a Brewmaster monk. We're like immune to this with Chi Torpedo or even roll with Transcendence. You don't need it. Toxic Wretch is going to come out again. One of these dispels I was really late on. Oh, it's this one. I did it late here on the mage, so the mage was a little bit lower, and then I think he commits block to the next one. They come up pretty quickly. The focus is adds here. We're looking pretty healthy. I get the mage early this time around. The ad is still at 50% health though, and I want to get over there and help kill really quick, so I touch of death, and then Rancid Maw is going to go on our DPS again. I have Diffuse active now, and that's just mainly so I can like walk through poop and not feel bad about it. And then this time I'm going to dispel the mage again. I think there is a point where I dispel the priest when he's low, but this is going to be the second Spike Tongue. This is the best time. If you have Lust coming up mid-fight, Lusting at this point is the best because you have DPS who are able to just literally pump. As you can see here, I transcend. The priest grips me for some reason. I didn't need it, but he did. I appreciate it. Toxic Scratch comes out again. Trying to get to melee before, and then I end up dispelling the... I dispelled the priest this time because the mage blocked before I can actually dispel. So, unfortunately, wasted 2 globals on my end, which sucks for energy, but that's alright. Get the Celestial Brew, Toxic Crutch one more time. We have Dispel again. I think I get the Mage. Yeah. And that's really it. 110k HPS, though, from the Priest is pretty impressive. The Priest ended up dying to the... I think a Hurl Rock at the very, very end. But overall, pretty good. Having a Shadow Priest is massive, honestly. 22k HPS, 23k HPS. Being at 80%, I think we're a little bit over, but I think we're still going to be fine. We're going to just hug left-hand side, basically. We're going to pull these 2 guys by themselves. You can definitely chain this if you want to on Tyrannical Weeks with the Scorpion on the back left. Though, again, it's kind of scary on the tank, and with the looking at our timer, we're actually like super fucking like clean. Avalanche, watch those swirls. 2 people got hit. That's a-okay. Right when this Char Skin spawns, you want to actually stun him so he doesn't charge right away with the Burning Hatred. He's pretty fast. I'm trying to Touch of Death him, but also make sure that the Breaker isn't going to avalanche frontal my group and only avalanche into the wall. Pretty clean there. And then these Dominators are just kind of scary for the tank. They do a lot of physical damage. While tanks do mitigate physical damage pretty well, they can slap during their frenzy. I don't know if it could be soothed, actually. It looks like it was just removed there, so we're actually fine. Because I know there's a strat where you can double pull the last groups together, but it's double of these guys, and they are brutal. Now, I'm in a spot where I kind of want to hold defenses for boss, but I also need to stay alive on these pulls. So I think I'm going to try to commit as little defenses as I can here. I see a lot of people prioritize the Dominator in these pulls, but honestly, I think the Trappers are scarier. Because the Trappers do this Jagged Disc. And this Jagged Disc, as you can see, it is wrecking our Priest right now. And now it's going to go on our Mage. And it just like, it chunks you up for like 30% of their health, or 25%. And that's a lot to heal through. Especially on 4 weeks, I can't imagine how that's going to be. So I recommend personally targeting those guys instead of the Dominators, because the Dominators just really hit the tank. Oh, I guess they do a little bit of AoE damage. Never mind, I'm high. Don't listen to me. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the Trappers just like the pelts are more are gonna put your group in a scary situation, because while the Dominators will hit kind of everyone, it seems like the Trappers are the griefers. I didn't even realize that, actually. Now that I'm watching the footage back, I can tell that the Dominator is like throwing rocks at everyone. But I guess to be fair, the Pelter is targeting like one person and has less health, so it's easier to kill. So I'm not sure. If you know what you actually should prioritize, let me know in the comments below. If you are even still watching 23 minutes in. Alright, now I have to be honest, we do wipe on this boss the first time. And we wiped for a very strange reason. I ended up getting slippity slapped by a weird mechanic overlap that ended up causing the boss to move a bunch. So I think I might skip ahead to where that wipe happened, and I'll talk about just our kill. So if you see the timer jump ahead here, it's because I clipped out our wipe. Alright, so I skipped ahead to this is our second magma wave. We're looking really good, really healthy. Our priest is still super juiced. We're baiting this crystal spike. Unfortunately, it spawns on me, so I try to back up. I get knocked. I roll forward into this spike, which causes the boss to move a bunch, to go around the spike to get to me. And because of that, plus lack of I had no mitigation up. I had no Celestial Brew, I had no Fort Brew, I had no Dampen Harm. He just actually killed me with his Molten Crash. Then here, the priest is underneath the boss, and the boss is a frontal, which knocks the priest back into the spike, which kills the priest again. So that was a weird overlap, and it was kind of unfortunate, because while the spike can go on the tank, I don't feel like it's very common. Now, luckily, there isn't a ton of damage if you aren't moving the boss. So if we bait the next spike well, and I don't move the boss at all here, which I don't. Thank God for, roll. Well, I guess I did one tick there. Boss is at 16%. The only damage we're going to be taking is from this lava pool that's to our left. Mage procs cheat here because he stayed out for a tick of the magma wave. So I honestly, if we kept him up, we would have probably killed here. Unfortunately, the boss has to be moved out of that pool. Or I guess I could have maybe kept him in one step, but spike spawns on me and we wipe at 8%. I think I get him a little lower, but we wipe here basically. With about 5 minutes remaining, we're able to run back and time this key. So I'm going to go ahead a little bit here. We're about to pull him. Let's walk through the full fight and how I'm going to do this. So pulling him back, I pull him back 2 steps, which means that the group's going to take a little bit of damage, but not enough where the healer can't handle it. And then there's no damage for a little bit. So healer can kind of just heal and then chill. Spike, you want to bait to his left arm and then spawn the char skin, because the char skin spawns to like similar to the idol on the second boss, Mr. Ularogg. The char skin kind of spawns in the same pattern as the first idol. So you can actually control where he spawns, and you can spawn him really close to the pillar. So first crystal spike, always spawn to your boss, ideally on his left arm, and then the char skin should be faced kind of adjacent to that. Molten Crash is nature damage, so here, Dampen Harm we're going to commit first. We also still have access to Fort Brew, which is, you know, fairly strong, but our Diffuse Magic is going to be our kind of our big button here. I should have probably actually used that before I used Dampen, but that's okay. I wanted to get the longer cooldown. Rolling first, but I guess Diffuse might have been better here. Molten Crash comes out again. We're going to actually eat that one because we had a big old Expel Harm saved up. And now Magma Wave's coming out. If you can try to hold the boss a little bit closer, because if you have him right up against one of these spikes, you can actually melee the boss through the wall and use abilities. So that's really only important to really min-max if you're stretched on time. This was a far spike spawn. So I try to move the boss a little closer, and I'm also going to make sure I'm facing him as close to the spike as possible. There's the char skin. Unfortunately, the fixate came out pretty fast and nuked our priest. Our priest died right as he got stunned. We're going to get a battle risk pretty quickly. I'm going to waddle our way back because of the spell queuing. The crystal spike wasn't too bad. We're going to pop our shocking disclosure to make sure that this char skin dies early before it gets back up and starts walking again. And I'm just making sure that Dargrul is facing away from my group. We're going to get one more landslide into the storming. I kind of saw it there. You could say it's an accident, but I saw it there, and I did that on purpose so I didn't go flying. I didn't have to waste like a roll, especially with where these groups, my group has been spawning these spikes. I was like, oh man, they're spawning it so far. I need to be able to get there and save my chi torpedoes to not take a bunch of damage. So that's kind of why I did that. Obviously, you can't do that every week because storming only exists on storming weeks. I provoked the boss. I am running Hasty Provocation because being able to move this boss faster, it's almost like per second. So getting him out of the pool, actually, I think it saves our group a little bit of damage, because instead of, if the longer he takes while moving, the more damage the group will take. But if he's running, that doesn't change the fact, like his, the speed he runs doesn't change the damage you're going to take. It's like basically, it's based off of like time running, not distance. So Hasty Provo is really good here. Charskin spawns, but we're going to go for the tunnel. We have 35 seconds left. Landslide comes out. I'm going to roll to get back to the boss, and we're going to end it with a touch of death. No, I missed the touch of death. And as you can see, visible excitement and joy for being able to time. Actually, I think according to Subcreation, this was the F tier dungeon this week. This was the hardest dungeon. So being able to time the hardest dungeon on a 21st week in a pug, I was very, very, very excited. I was in Discord with a few friends and I was yelling, fuck yeah, like, let's go. You know, the good stuff, the nerd screams. Luckily, I don't need this cloak because I already have a crit verse cloak with avoidance on it, so I'm going to actually end up giving this cloak to the Boomkin. I hope he uses it well. Grats, Mr. Pews from Illidan. Went to Vortex, but that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of commentary. This dungeon most likely will see a couple more nerfs going into Fort Week with some certain abilities, but a lot of the bosses, if you're in here and you're like wiping in whatever key you're in, just know that some of it is a gear check. A lot of us are still low item level. In a couple of weeks, when people are starting to get their like 447s and stuff equipped, these dungeons are going to feel much, much easier, and the healing checks are going to be easier to meet, and the DPS checks are going to be much easier to meet as well. So hopefully we see some more good changes. Blizzard has been doing a bang-up job kind of staying on top of some of the nerfs and in like tuning things properly as people progress. But don't, if you're in keys like this, don't get too discouraged, because the rest of the season is looking and shaping up to be quite good. All right. Thanks for watching. Take care.